Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Get the panel discussion started. So without any further ado, I'd like to jump right into it. So welcome to 100 Coach HR Secrets Revealed panel discussion. Could I please could I just please ask that everyone keeps muted during this discussion to avoid any feedback. But yes, let's get started. So this is a panel discussion with only ATAR 99.95 students to really reveal all of the secrets that help them achieve the scores that they achieved. And look, we've been in your situation going into grade 12. We were just as nervous as you might have been, just as anxious, not really knowing what the future would hold for us when it comes to grade 12. But over our time in grade 12, we really developed this sense as to what it means to go into grade 12, started developing skills that helped us ace the year and helped make it one of the most enjoyable years of our life. So we really wanted to come together and share with you some of the secrets that helped make grade 12 one of the most enjoyable years of our lives, but also helped us score very highly. And before jumping straight into the panel discussion, I'd like to first mention the sponsor of this event. And without 100Coach, this event wouldn't be possible. 100Coach, just to quickly recap, is a tutoring company that only hires ATAR 99.95 students or students who achieved 100% in their subjects. When you come on board 100Coach, you get this guarantee that you are getting the nation's highest standard of tutoring, the best that we have to offer you and the best that Queensland has to offer you. So if you haven't done so already, I would highly encourage you all to head to our website, 100coach.com.au/enrollment, and join up for our 100Coach Masterclass series. And we do all subjects from chemistry to physics to math methods, specialist math, English, you name it. And we've probably got the subject there with the highest standard of tutoring for you. More so, we have the most affordable and accessible tutoring service that's available. For only $20 an hour, you can get access to one of the highest scoring students in the state. And all sessions are delivered virtually and are recorded so that you can watch it anytime at your convenience. So have a look at 100Coach's website. But before, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the panelists. So my name is Vishak Gangasandra. So I graduated in 2020, 2 years ago now, with an ATAR of 99.95 and was named by QCAA as the #1 student in Queensland as the outstanding academic achiever. And you'll see 3 people have their cameras on today, and that is Claudia, Thej, and Elijah. So I'll let them introduce themselves. So I'll start with you, Thej.
Hello, so my name is Thej Thej for short. So I graduated last year. I also got an ATAR of 99.95. This year, I'm planning to go into the provisional medicine program of the University of Queensland. I came to Australia a bit over 2 years ago. I came from Sri Lanka. When I started year 11 in 2020. Basically, aside from studies, I do swimming, debating, and boxing in my spare time. And I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Tej. A wonderful introduction. And let's move on to Claudia.
Yeah, hi, my name is Claudia. I also graduated last year with an ATAR of 99.95. And I'm planning on studying engineering and computer science at UQ. I think maybe the most notable thing in my senior year was that I was heavily involved in co-curriculars. I was in 5 bands, I captained 3 clubs, and did quite a few sports. So I think that for those of you who really love their co-curriculars, it shows that you don't have to sacrifice your hobbies to get a good score. And I also I'm passionate about charities and technology, and that's why I'm going into the computer science degree. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Claudia. And for our final panelist today, Elijah.
Hi, I'm Elijah. I'll be studying medical science or medicine at the Griffith University. Throughout year 12, I was pretty involved too. I was the vice captain of track and field, one of the prefects at my school, and also part of the academic support committee. Throughout year 12, I also participated in a few competitions, being academic competitions mostly, being chemistry and physics and other mathematical competitions too.
Yes, thank you. So I guess we'll sort of start off with a discussion and like to start off with ATAR and what exactly is it? So you all will know in the audience going into grade 12 right now that ATAR is really 4 digits that you get at the end of grade 12. So these digits are a representation of your percentile. So it's how you score in relation to everyone else in your grade. and they're divided into groups of 0.05. So if you score an ATAR of 99.95, like all of the panelists today, it means that you're in the top 0.05% of people within the state. So it means if you graduated last year, you would have been in the top 32 people in the entire Queensland. It also means that every single ATAR that there is, regardless of what the number is, there's only 32 people in the state that achieve that very exact ATAR. And it's sort of a way to rank people based on their scores in grade 12. The way it's calculated is by looking at your top 5 subjects. So you go into grade 12, you sit all of your internal assessments, and then you sit your external exam. Then your raw scores of that is converted into a mark out of 100. And this is where scaling plays a factor, right? So some subjects are scaled higher, some subjects are scaled lower, and your raw score that you get in the subjects is then turned into a scale score out of 100. The QCAA, which is the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, the main education body of Queensland, they'll take your top 5 subjects. So you can do 6, I did 7 subjects, 2 of those subjects didn't count, but they'll only take the top 5 subjects and they'll add it up to give you an aggregated score. The students with the top aggregate scores are the students who get the highest ATAR, and then they rank people based off the total aggregate score. So that's exactly what ATAR is. But I had a few more questions, and this will be directed to the panel today, which is how important is getting a good ATAR? Because a lot of people might have that question.
I think getting a good ATAR is quite important, especially depending on the ATAR requirement for your course. Say you wanted to do a course that has an ATAR, a minimum ATAR of 99, and you get lower than that. There are alternate pathways you can do, but they wouldn't be as convenient as getting straight into that course. So it really depends on what course you're planning to do, if you're planning to do a course at all, I think.
Yes, wonderful answer. Thej and Elijah, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Claudia pretty much covered the gist of it. Essentially, HR is pretty important. There's alternate pathways, so it's not really the end of the world if you don't get the ATAR you want. But at the end of the day, if you do get the successful ATAR you want for the course that you want to do, it really makes life easier in the coming years.
Yeah, very good point you raised. And look, ATAR isn't the be all and end all. After you get into your unique degree, I can guarantee you 100%, no one will ever ask for your ATAR ever again. And if you bring up your ATAR in conversation, people will think you're quite weird. But to get to that point in the first place, it's very important to get that good ATAR. And again, a little bit of study and focus and determination in grade 12 can save you another 3 years of a different undergraduate degree to then transfer into the degree of your choice. So it's about balancing your time commitments in grade 12 and really having this mindset that hard work now will really pay off and save you so much time in the future. And I guess this sort of leads me into the next question, which is, what can you do to optimize your ATAR scores? Like, what are the things you can do to get the best possible ATAR? So I'll start with you, Elijah, for this question.
So some things that you can probably do to maximize your ATAR is that although the scaling report has only been out for 1 year and possibly this year the scaling report will come out too, there's certain subjects that scale better than others. So devoting possibly more time to a specific subject or even a specific subject that you're not as strong in, you need to ensure that overall your top 5 subjects, you're doing very well in all of your top 5 subjects in order to maximize that ATAR.
Wonderful. And Thej and Claudia, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add that scaling is really important, like Elijah said, but it's also important to do the subjects that you're passionate about and that you have a strong suit in. So if you don't think you're that good at physics or specialist and you're better at other subjects that don't scale as high, it's probably more worth your time to do those subjects, especially if you know you're going to do better in them. So I think the 2 important factors are both scaling and your proficiency and passion for that subject.
Thank you. And Thej, do you have anything else to say?
So just building up on that. So basically my idea is that externals, well, we all know exactly how the ATAR system goes. There's 3 internals for everything, and then there's an external exam. The external exam is a bit more out of our control than the internals, in my opinion. And I think what everyone should try to do is maximize your internals going into the external exam, so you have an overall sense of confidence. And I'm sure all of us talking here, we went into the external exam with fairly strong internal exams. So I think that's a point that we should work on.
Yeah, very great point. And just to add to that, whenever you're given an assignment at school, the biggest tip that I can give anyone is definitely don't leave it to the last minute. And more so than that, once you have finished it early, go to your teachers for feedback and get a lot of feedback, that too as well. Because look, your teachers aren't there to mark you down. Your teachers want to help you. They want to support you. You just need to be giving them the work that they can support you with. So if you finish an assignment early, get it drafted by a teacher. I'm sure that no teacher who is in a job of teaching would just say no to reading your assessments. Like, I'm sure that they love their jobs, or that they're in teaching for a specific reason. So definitely go and get this extra feedback, because the more feedback you can get from your teachers, the better you'll be able to craft your assignments, the better you'll be able to improve upon your scores in your internal assessment, which would then carry your raw scores in each of your subjects. Another thing to mention for optimizing your ATAR scores is right now, and I mean, like, probably do it within the next week before school really starts ramping up, is have a look at every single one of the syllabus dot points throughout the year, because that'll be a guide as to what will actually be assessed on the external exam and what won't be assessed on the external exam. And if you can have a look through all of those syllabus dot points right now, as you're learning the content, you can better picture and visualize in your head what content is directly relevant, what content is not as relevant, and where you should be focusing your efforts. Because there might be one topic that might have 10, 15 syllabus dot points within the curriculum, but there might be another topic that might only have 2 or 3. So that's a very clear indicator that the more complicated questions on the external exam, the bulk of your assignments will be from the topic with more syllabus dot points. So definitely keep a very close eye on those syllabus dot points and start to have a look at them now, because having a look at them now would mean that as you're learning the content, you can better picture where the content fits in the scope of grade 12. And that sort of rounds off our discussion on ATAR and exactly what it is. And I wanted to move on to a few questions on study habits. So I wanted to open this to the panel. So is it important to have a study schedule? And if so, what would a study schedule look like, or how would you go about creating one?
I think it's definitely important to have a study schedule. And what I did mainly for the external exams was, since I'd already learned most of the content in class and for revision, I looked at the syllabus. Like Vishak said, the syllabus is really important. And I circled the areas that I didn't really feel that confident in, and I based my schedule off of that. But another point that I think a few people don't really realize is you can't make your study schedule unachievable, because say you have a study schedule that requires 10 or more hours of study a day, things like that, you'll definitely become demotivated. And then once you've not done your study schedule for a few days, you'll just not want to start again. You'll start procrastinating and the work will pile up. So it's important to have a study schedule that's achievable, that's specific, and that's manageable.
Oh, wonderful answer. Tej and Elijah, do you want to add anything to that?
So something that I did in year 12, I started creating a separate study schedule for each term. For example, in term 1, if I knew that I had IAs in chemistry and physics, then I would allocate a lot more time for just chemistry and physics rather than I would for maths, because I knew that maths was just an exam at the end of the term. And then in the next term, I look at what subjects I have IAs in, and I'd once again allocate more time for those subjects because I wanted to prioritize the internals. So I think what you need to do, what worked for me, was creating a separate timetable for each term and allocating what I thought was best given what was happening in that term.
Wonderful. That amazing answer. And Elijah?
Yeah, I'll second that. What I also did personally was that I used the checkpoints for each assignment. So for example, in most of your maths assignments or English assignments, even science assignments, you get checkpoints that you have to make deadlines for. And using these checkpoints as a guidance for what you should be doing for each week at each point in the term is a pretty good idea, as it makes a pretty good structure for you and a plan for how to attack your different assignments and what you should be doing at that point in time.
Oh, wonderful. And yeah, I just wanted to add to all of those answers that a study schedule should be something that's individual to you. So everyone has a different study schedule. But I think it's very valuable to sort of look at the study schedules that Claudia, Tej, and Elijah outlined, because it did work for them. It did enable them to achieve very high scores. And I think it might be very valuable if you can pick and choose the best aspects of each one and really see what works best for you. And again, you don't really know what works until you've tried it out. So maybe you might spend the first few weeks of term one or the first half of term one trying something out. But then if that doesn't work, don't stick with it. It's always okay to change your study schedule. It's always okay to deviate from a plan as long as you're moving to a better plan or a different plan that you want to test out. Because a study schedule isn't a one size fits all type of thing, right? It's something that you should be able to develop by yourself and look at what your strengths are as a student and really mold to that. So that's a little bit about your study schedules. But one question, and this is something that is very common amongst grade 12 students. I know that I definitely felt it going in towards the end of grade 12. But how do you keep motivated in grade 12 with so many assessments, so many other things to manage? How do you keep motivated? I'll start with you, Elijah, if you wanted to add to that.
Okay. So one way that I kept motivated throughout high school was that I made sure that I had a strong support network. So by using your friends or not by using your friends, sorry, by having friends that have a common goal and objective in mind. For example, if you surround yourself with other high achieving people or people who want to do well, this gives you the motivation and, in a sense, a little bit of competition, but well, good competition in this sense. And it motivates you to do better, to continue working hard, to study the extra hour, and to ensure that you're not left behind, and then everyone together can achieve the best they can.
I agree with this, but also your motivation both needs to be external and internal. I think having a strong internal motivation is the most important thing, because if your parents or your teachers or friends are trying to push you to do your best, that is all well and good. But if you don't have that motivation internally, it's not really going to work out. So I think ways to improve your internal motivation is maybe try a visualization, picture yourself achieving the score that you want, picture the pathways that'll open for you, but just try and stay motivated within yourself, especially, I think.
Wonderful. And Tej, did you want to add to that?
I agree with Claudia, but mostly I think Elijah has a really valid point, because that definitely did work for me. I had a friend group who constantly challenged me, who would say would all my level personally, and it would work in the sense if I had spent an entire day studying and I was pretty tired, what I would do is I'd get a Discord call with my friends and we'd just go through the syllabus stop points and we'd quiz each other. And I found that that method really worked to keep my motivation up, especially at times when it was slipping. So I think that's a really valid point that Elijah raised.
Yeah, no, a really, really great answers to that. And look, everyone has different motivation, but I think that the methods that you shared are things that really would keep students going. It definitely kept me going. One other thing that I wanted to add to this motivation, and this is something that really got me through grade 12, but it's even gotten me through uni so far, and it's really gotten me through life as well, is this notion that if you work hard now in the short term, your life will be easier in the long term. So in grade 12, I always had this mindset that going into term one, yes, it's only like 8-9 more months left. Then going into term two, only like 6 months more left. Going into term three, there's only like 4 months more left. And going into term four, there was only 1 month left, right? So it's having this mindset that the more time that passes by, the less time you have to endure with grade 12, right? So it's knowing that grade 12 is a very short period of time. Like realistically, if you look at your whole life, grade 12 is at most like 1 year of the rest of your life, which is such a long time with so many exciting opportunities, right? If you work hard in grade 12, and this is definitely what I thought when going into grade 12 and really helped me, was this notion that if I work really hard in grade 12, it'll make the rest of my life a whole lot easier. And look, grade 12 isn't the be all or end all. It doesn't define who you are, but it does make life right after high school a little bit easier to get into, say, the university degree of your choice, or maybe even certain scholarships or certain positions here and there. So it's having that mindset that, look, it doesn't last forever, but that tough time that you endure will lead to a lot of easier ones later down the line. That's the motivation that got me through grade 12. And yeah, sort of moving on to the next question. And Claudia, you sort of mentioned this in your introduction, but one thing I noticed from all of the panelists today is that they had such a varied set of extracurriculars. Like, it's evident that you were really involved, all three of you were really involved in your extracurricular life during high school. So could you add to a little bit as to how important extracurriculars are in high school?
Yeah, like I said before, extracurriculars are so important, not only as an outlet, but also as a break from studying and just a chance to have fun. Because I find that once you've done something like a sport or another co-curricular or your favorite hobby, you'll feel kind of rejuvenated and replenished, and you'll want to sit down and study as opposed to sitting down for like long hours trying to study. And I think the quality of work you do when you're more happy and more positive and more fulfilled is a lot better as well. So definitely they're so important.
Wonderful answer. Thej, did you want to add to that?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. I think if you plan on doing just studying in year 12, that's basically the recipe for failure. I think you really do want to mix it up. Essentially, even if you're on a study day, if you've studied for 1 or 2 hours, you allocate an hour to do something extracurricular, maybe a sport, maybe you play your instrument, something like that for an hour, just to make sure you're getting that external relief that's doing by doing something that you actually enjoy.
Yes, 100%. And look, I say this to any grade 12s currently who have asked me on advice going into grade 12, is that grade 12 is called grade 12. It's not called your ATAR year. So it's not really just about your ATAR. It's not just about your studies. It's an opportunity for you to grow and develop as a person when you have the time. When you go into uni, you've got other commitments. You might possibly move out and have to work a part-time job. You might have to organize many other things on top of your studies at university, which do in some regards get a little bit harder than high school. So grade 12 is a perfect time in your life where you have the free time to explore options and have the free time to develop skills that will really help you later on. And again, when you get into the real world, you soon realize that people start creating an image on you based off the skills that you have and the presentation that you provide, the way that you present yourself to the world. So grade 12 is a perfect opportunity to start to develop those skills. And the best way to do this, in my opinion, is through extracurriculars, whether it be playing a sport, right? It'll teach you a lot about teamwork, teach you a lot about determination, teach you a lot about like mental and physical stress and how to endure all of that, whether it be being involved in bands or being involved in music. It teaches you a lot about patience and teaches you a lot about being in time, being very skilled. They have a lot of extra skills that they teach you, right? Regardless of what the extracurricular is, it teaches you a lot of things, right? And it's also a way to de-stress, because grade 12 with just studies can be very challenging at times. So you need an opportunity or a pathway to vent or de-stress, and extracurriculars are a perfect opportunity to both de-stress but also develop skills. And I think that that was a really great answer from both you, Thej and Claudia. So thanks for that. I sort of want to move on to this next aspect, which is guidance, right? So we don't do grade 12s alone. We have our communities around us really supporting us through grade 12. But I sort of wanted to ask this question because a lot of people have been asking me this question over the last year or so, and a lot of people have been forwarding this question in. So how important is it to have like a good mentor or a good tutor in grade 12?
Personally, I'd say it's incredibly important. Well, other than essentially, you can use your friend group as mentors as well. But if you just leave that aside for a second, I had a tutor who was just my maths tutor, but essentially it became just more than that. Instead of just teaching me about math, he would teach me about how to study, how to allocate my time. And personally, I think he's very responsible for my result. And I think it's incredibly important that at the end of the day to have a good tutor.
Yes, wonderful answer.
And sometimes, like, I personally didn't have a tutor, but it's really important to have other people to connect to. So sometimes when I didn't understand what my teacher was teaching, I would go to another teacher of the same subject to get a different explanation. Also, reaching out to past students for guidance, especially if you know them quite well, is really good. So there's multiple options, but I definitely think that a tutor is the most direct and convenient option.
Yes, wonderful. And Elijah, you've done some tutoring in recent days. So can you attest to this?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that most of my students are very happy with the tutoring that I've been providing, and that their results have. So initially, one of my students was very unsure with one of his PSMTs, but through just one or two lessons, he became more confident and he saw a clear path and plan of attack to approach his PSMT. And although he hasn't handed it in yet, we are still continuing refining the work. And a tutor does not only help you in just, as Fej said, mathematics, but they can provide you guidance, emotional support, well-being support, and anything else that you may require. Sometimes it's just good to have a chat with someone who may just be a little bit older than you because for me, I've just graduated and these students are in year 12 and we can relate to each other quite well.
Yeah, wonderful answer. And again, I just wanted to quickly round off this discussion by saying that in grade 12, there's really two things that you need. You need to have a lot of motivation, drive, and passion for your subjects and for your studies. But that pretty much goes to waste if you don't have the perfect guidance. You need to be able to channel all of your motivation. You need to be able to channel all of your passions for your subjects in the right methods, right? There's no point studying inefficiently for, say, 20 hours when you can do the same amount of work in, say, just 2 or 3 hours, right? And this is where having a really good mentor or a really good tutor comes in, because they'll be able to show you the pathways and teach you the skills to study more efficiently. And they'll be able to teach you it in a way that is perfectly delivered or tailored to your learning style. So I would really recommend over the next few weeks or so, trying to look for mentors. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal tutor, although that might help, but it could just be a mentor. It could be, say, someone that you know who recently graduated. It could have been someone who graduated from your school last year, and just asking them tips on how they studied, asking them tips on what really worked well for them. And I guess at the end of the day, with the right motivation, drive, and guidance as well, you'll be able to achieve anything. And again, this sort of brings me to this last point of formal discussion before I open the floor to Q&A, is for exam preparation and resources. So starting off this question, how do you study efficiently?
I think that studying efficiently, it entails putting in a lot of work, but spaced evenly throughout the year. So don't save it all to the end, because then you'll just get overwhelmed. It's important to consistently put in the work, put in the hours, or so they say, because if you don't do that, it's so easy to procrastinate once you get to the end of the year. And I think just doing study throughout the year helped me so much, as opposed to peers of mine who were just kind of freaking out when external exams came around. So it's definitely has to be consistent and sustainable study.
Yes, wonderful answer. Elijah, did you want to add to that?
So for exam preparation and resources, I believe that trying to do as much preparation as you can, like in terms of doing as many practice exams as possible, once, of course, you're ready to do those practice exams, because if you don't have the sufficient knowledge or understanding and you jump straight into these practice exams, you most likely won't be seeing much improvement, as you'll just be not getting all the questions correct, and then that will feel pretty unmotivating. But once you believe you have the sufficient knowledge and understanding of the content, doing as many preparation exams gives you exposure to different question types and difficult questions that may pop up in the exam. And I believe this is one of the ways that I did fairly well in my math exams, because I did a lot of math exams and preparations in the upcoming weeks for the externals.
Yes, wonderful. And Tej, do you want to add to that as well?
Just one point. So just talking about like a study program for the day, I think it's important to understand that everyone has different kind of limits. Everyone has a different attention span. And I think you need to kind of base your study preparation around that. For example, I've seen many friends try to keep studying for 3 hours, and at the end, they just wasted the last 2 hours of it. I think it's important that you identify the amount of time that you have the optimum concentration, so to say, and you make sure that you get evenly spaced breaks in between, just to make sure that you're doing well the most in the least amount of time.
Yes, wonderful. And I guess that sort of leads me on to the next question, which is, what should you be doing to study? So I know Elijah mentioned doing practice exams, that really worked for him, but what are the other things that you should be doing to study? Like, what makes study study?
I think definitely, once again, coming back to the syllabus, it's so important to look at the syllabus because it's basically a cheat sheet for every single topic that's going to be on the exam. And with your practice exams, it's important to do, as Elijah said, varied types of exams, because if you do too many of the same question type, when an unfamiliar question comes up in the exam, you might kind of freak out and panic. So it's important to do enough questions that you're like open to any question type, but not too many that your brain just goes on autopilot. Also, I think rewriting notes, I know that's a personal thing, but that was very, very important for me because it really helped when I went over the notes I'd made in class to find the things that I'd missed out on, to ask more relevant, like specific questions, and kind of just broaden my understanding of the syllabus and the topic.
Wonderful answer. And Tej, do you wanted to add to that?
Just building a bit more on what Claudia said, I think it's very important that you figure out what kind of question, like not get stuck in the same kind of questions, but also I think it's important that you figure out specific type of question that you're weak in and you work towards those kind of questions. For example, I was pretty bad at complex unfamiliar of like trigonometry methods, and I had to work quite hard to get my level up to that. So I think it's important that you focus your attention to specific areas like that. Something else that also worked for me, but this might be personal, was I would take the syllabus dot points and I'd have a discussion with my friends, and we'd go through each dot point and we'd make sure that each and every one of us knew exactly what would come under it. Then we'd make up questions about that specific dot point and we'd quiz each other all around, and that I think worked great for me preparation wise.
Yes, wonderful. And yeah, look, these are amazing ways to study. So have a look at the syllabus dot points. Do a lot of practice exam questions. So do a lot of past papers and practice exam questions. Right now, there've been 2 full years of grade 12s graduate. So you've got access to all of their final exams that just upload on the QCAA website. Another thing as well is looking at other resources that you can find easily free and available online to practice specific questions. Look through the textbook and aim to do as many questions as you can, because you can never go wrong with practice, right? Practice is a natural ability to get better at these questions, right? It's an ability to train yourselves to be more familiar with questions that might be unfamiliar in the exam, right? And that's the best way to give yourself this competitive edge over all the other students. Okay, so that sort of rounds off this discussion around exam preparation and resources. So I wanted to open the floor up to Q&A, and there's a question that's been posted in the chat. So I'll answer that first. So this is the question: does tutoring online affect/downgrade your study when compared to one-on-one tutors? So I guess I'll sort of answer this first. In my opinion, no. I feel that online tutoring is a little bit better than face-to-face tutoring. And I have a reason for this. So there are many reasons as to why I feel online tutoring is a lot better. So one, it saves you a lot of time. So I know when I had a tutor in the past, I would have to travel often 15, 20 minutes one way. So if I'd go to a library or go to their place and then come back, that ends up being about 30 minutes to nearly an hour of my time just spent in travel, which I felt wasn't the most efficient. I felt that that time could be spent either on more study or on relaxing or getting involved in things that I enjoyed more than, sitting in a car. And another thing about online tutoring is that you're given a lot of tools online that you're just not given on pen and paper. You're given the ability to share screens and share a lot of resources left, right, and center. There's a lot more connectivity online, I feel. Yes, you don't get the personal touch of having a tutor right there, but I feel that the tools available online would make tutoring a lot more handy, because say if you ever need to grab a document that's very important, say the syllabus dot points or a data sheet, you can easily just share a screen online or share the links online, which might not be as easy to do if it was face-to-face. And on top of that as well, I feel that the tutors that you might be able to get access to online, in my opinion, tutors who are a lot more refined than one-on-one in-person tutors, because the tutors who are available online are tutors across the entire state or across the entire nation. So you can find tutors at the very top level, whereas the tutors for one-on-one face-to-face tutoring is really just dependent on your personal connections or whoever's available in your local area. So that's why I feel that having an online tutoring network is far superior when it comes to delivering higher quality education. And again, this is what 100Coach aims to do. It aims to provide the highest quality tutors online virtually, so accessible to anyone at any time for the cheapest cost. And we can only do this due to online methods. So it's a perfect method to get the highest scorers in the state to sort of share their secrets, as to what led them to score so highly, so that you can put in place the actionable steps to score just as highly as they did. Did you guys want to add anything else to that?
I think you pretty much covered it.
And then, yes, there's this next question, which is what subjects do each one of you tutor? So I tutor with 100Coach for chemistry and physics. And I'll let you guys talk about your tutoring, but I believe it's all private individual tutoring, correct?
Yeah, so I mostly tutor younger students, so like kind of middle school, but I'm also have started tutoring 2 students going into year 12, so I think it's pretty broad for me. Yeah.
Same goes for me. I started tutoring kids going to year 12, 11, and 10. The main subject that I've focused on is just maths in general for year 10s, methods and specialists, physics, chemistry, and a bit of economics as well. But yeah, I think both me and Claude, we do it privately, right?
Yep.
And I tutor with 100Coaches too. So I tutor methods and specialists. And I also offer specialist mathematics, methods, physics, and chemistry as private individual tutoring.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thanks for that, guys. And I guess moving on to the next question, which is, what would you say are the most important topics for the specialist external exam? I'll probably let Elijah answer this question.
So I believe that question is not really answerable, to be honest, because all topics are important for the specialist external exam. But what I would say is that if you find a topic hard or more difficult than the other topics, I would say obviously just concentrate more and put more effort and time into that particular topic so that you round off your general ability for all of the topics for the specialist external, because you don't know what actually comes up on the external. It's all of the syllabus, but you don't know exactly which topic or question in that sense.
Yeah, look, that's 100% correct. And look, if you're really looking and passionate about scoring like really high, you should be aiming to cover every single topic, because there will be at least 1 or 2 questions on every single topic. And that'll be like a barrier to scoring like really highly, because every small question does count. In saying that though, the majority of questions from my recollection came from vectors, differentiation, and integration. But there were lots of complex, unfamiliar questions that came outside of those outside those topics on both the calculator active and the calculator free exam. So it's very important to be well-rounded in all of the topics. Moving on to the next question, which is, what was the hardest part of grade 12? And I'll direct this question to Tej if he was happy to answer it.
To be honest, I think the hardest part for me was I had a goal starting year 12, obviously try to get a 99.95 ATAR. And I think as the year went on, my motivation did kind of slip off and my expectations for myself started lowering. And by the end of the year, I was like, I'll be okay with a 99.7. And it's great that that didn't happen. But I think that's a common problem that a lot of people face, that you start off very strong in the year and your motivation just goes down.
Yes, great answer, Tej. Anyone wanted to add anything else to that?
I would like to say, I think a difficult point for me was maintaining a study and life balance, because I found myself putting in quite a lot of hours to study. With some topics I just felt a bit overwhelmed with, but it's so important to still hang out with your friends, still pursue your hobbies, because those are the things that make you like happy and make you want to study. It's kind of counterintuitive that doing other things will make you want to study, but I definitely find that that's the case. So while it's important to study and set goals for yourself, it's so important to have fun as well, definitely.
100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. And yeah, I'll sort of direct this next question to you, Claudia. How did you guys personally deal with upcoming exam stress?
Okay, starting off, I didn't deal with it very well. I'd find myself scrolling on Instagram for hours, or like playing video games late into the night, stuff that wasn't really constructive. But the most important thing to do when you find yourself in that situation, because you probably will, I definitely did multiple times, is to identify it and to not be so hard on yourself. Because when you tell yourself that you failed, like you didn't stick to your plan, it kind of just makes you procrastinate even more. You think you're not good enough, but just recognizing that you're human and sometimes studying, it just gets too hard, and it's important to take the time for yourself. That's so important. And then you just refresh, you just start again, maybe make a more manageable study plan. So it's just, you just have to be easy on yourself, I think.
Yes, wonderful answer. And with the next question, there are two questions that are in the chat, but I feel that they're almost identical. So the two questions were, how many hours a night did each of you study in grade 12? And what is a good amount of hours to study per subject? So like put together, roughly, how would you distribute your study in terms of time for each subject throughout the week, for example?
To be honest, for me, it wasn't a consistent science throughout the year. Like I said before, it all depended on what kind of subjects that I was placing priority on at that particular term, at that particular time. But essentially what I made sure to do was the actual number of hours wasn't really something that was going in my head. It was just make sure that I study enough so that I get make sure that I get the points that I want to cover within that week covered. I'm not too sure if that helps, but I say at the beginning of terms, I'd average around maybe an hour to 3 hours of study a day on a good day, maybe. But obviously that increased towards as externals got closer and stuff like that.
Great answer. Elijah, do you want to add to that?
So as I said before, what I did was I used the checkpoints. So I used the checkpoints to make sure that I was on task and I had everything planned out. But to actually give a specific number or number of hours, probably be like 2 or 3 hours, maybe not regularly, but at times it may get a bit longer, at times it might be a bit shorter. But what I feel is a really good gauge for knowing if you're studying enough or not is, as we've said it before, knowing that you've covered all the contents, syllabus dot points, and understanding the content in a really thorough way is probably the best gauge that you can actually give yourself when it comes to how much study you should be doing.
Yes, great answer. And yeah, moving on to the next question. Again, two questions which realistically say the same thing. Would you recommend studying ahead? And if so, what are the benefits of doing it?
Well, I find that studying ahead is not as important as studying after the class, because if you study the topic before it comes up in class, that may give you a bit of a hint, but you might get a bit confused, you might study the wrong thing. It's far more beneficial to like less than 24 hours after that class to recap, to go over what you didn't understand, parts of the class where you were kind of distracted, and just kind of cement your knowledge from that class. I think that's the most important thing.
Great answer. And Tej and Elijah, do you have anything to say to that?
No, I actually completely agree with Claudia. I think studying ahead might work for some people, and obviously it has benefits. Like, yeah, you can do better in classes, what's happening. But personally, I think it's far more important if you just go home after school and you just go through what you actually learned, just to make sure that it sticks in your head.
Yep, no, 100% agree. Consolidating knowledge is probably the best thing you can do in grade 12, because your external exams, they're going to be on the whole year's content, right? For math and the sciences. And because they're going to be on the whole year's content, cramming doesn't really work. And the QCAA have specifically designed the system to reward students who study and consolidate the knowledge throughout the year, not just those who cram. So that's like biggest piece of advice I can give any student going to grade 12 is that the grade 12 system currently as it stands isn't designed for cramming. So although that I know like in early grades, I'm definitely guilty of doing that. I used to do that. In grade 12, I realized that an exam at the end of the year, that's 50% of my grade, that's based on the whole year's worth of content, isn't something that I can just cram for. So definitely consolidating this knowledge throughout the year helps make it like second nature, so that when you go sit the exam, it becomes very easy to answer questions. Another thing as well is that this also takes a little bit of exam stress off your shoulders, right? I know that because I've been studying throughout the year and consolidating knowledge, I was already really familiar with all the content, even when it came to studying before the external exam. So it took a lot of stress off of me in the last few months before my external exam, because I knew that a lot of the content I had already known or I'd already gotten very familiar with. So yeah, that's a really good question. And now another question, which was, how different were your ATAR predictions from your actual ATARs? Right, I'll get all three of you to answer this.
Ella, you go first.
Okay, cool. So my school actually didn't do ATAR predictions, and I believe that was actually a pretty good thing, because the explanation behind that was that the ATAR prediction is, well, a prediction. It doesn't guarantee you a specific ATAR, and you cannot take it to heart in that sense. So what I've heard from other people at different schools is that they personally took this ATAR prediction as that, oh, I've got a pretty good ATAR and then I don't have to do that much study or something like that. This is like a pretty big trap that you don't want to fall into. And as a result, my school didn't do that. And I believe that is a pretty good thing. So ATAR prediction and actual ATAR, I'll say probably just focus on year 12 rather than just using a prediction.
Yeah, I would add to that by saying, although my school did do ATAR predictions, I actually chose not to do a prediction because for an entirely different reason, but also I think an equally valid reason. I really wanted to focus on year 12 doing my personal best and not relying on a number or a grade that I had to reach, because I feel like it put a lot less pressure on me. And that's kind of like, I wasn't really aiming for a 99.95. I was just aiming to do my best and have a well-rounded, balanced year. So I think with the ATAR predictions, there's just, if you don't get the same scores in the internal assessments as opposed to the formative ones, you'll start to be like, oh, I didn't do as well in this one, I didn't do as well in this one, my ATAR is going to drop. So I feel like not having that prediction it's just so much better for your mental health. And if you do have that prediction, I really wouldn't put that much thought into it because it's just a prediction in the end.
I actually completely agree with Claudia. My school did ATAR predictions, and I remember it was the third term, and my prediction was like a 99.6, which was obviously a bit lower than I was expecting. So I think that was the reason that I did start to get demotivated towards the end of the year. So my advice to you guys is, again, don't push too much power on the prediction itself. It's not really going to be 100% accurate, and there's always so much you can do, especially in externals, given that some subjects have 50% externals, to just completely change that.
Yeah, wonderful. And I just wanted to quickly add to that. And again, look, there is only one way to score highly in grade 12, and that's to focus on the fundamentals of what it is, right? That's study, and that is scoring well on the exams, right? There is no shortcuts to getting a high ATAR outside of study, right? Like you can't just go and like give a speech to the QCAA. You can't necessarily like bribe them or anything. There's only really one way to score highly, and that's by focusing on the fundamentals of studying and focusing on being the best student that you can be, right? And I 100% agree with everyone that these predictions, they don't ever mean anything, right? You should only be looking to score the best you possibly can. I know when I was going all throughout grade 12, I didn't know what ATAR I was going to get. And frankly, I didn't care what ATAR I was going to get during grade 12. I just knew that if I focused really hard on the scores and on the content that I was learning, then it'll work out well for me. And I think that having that attitude is the best way to manage stress and to manage other aspects of anxiety, specifically around grade 12. But yeah, thanks for that question. To move on to the next question, which is, did you ever experience burnout, and what did you do to help overcome it?
Yeah, I absolutely experienced burnout, especially because I think we all put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and that burnout kind of led to, as I said before, procrastination. So the number one way to deal with that, as I've already said, is just to forgive yourself, because it's okay to burn out. It's normal if you're putting that much pressure on yourself. And if you keep talking yourself down and feeling guilty, it's just going to get worse. So the ability to take a deep breath, step away from it, realize that it's just a score and it doesn't define you, and then try and reset your brain. That is the most important thing that I've learned during year 12.
Wonderful answer. And I guess I sort of wanted to move on to sort of cover the rest of the questions that have been asked today. So moving on to the next question, what should we do in the holidays? This is what our students ask. So what should we be doing in the holidays? Elijah, do you want to answer this question?
During the holidays, well, for what most of the schools that I've heard of and at my school, we were at times given assignments during the holidays. So is that correct with Claudia and Fedge? Were you given assignments during your holidays?
We're given assignments like just before the holidays that we could start during the holidays. So kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're given like hints almost what would happen next term.
Yeah, exactly. So during these holidays, you probably just use some of your time to actually prepare for these assignments or any upcoming tests. Of course, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, take time to relax and chill out for a bit. Give yourself maybe like for the first week of holidays, just do nothing at all. And then at the second week, probably just bring some content back, start doing a little bit of revision, but still take care of yourself, as year 12 is indeed quite stressful for all of you guys.
Yeah, like it's definitely called a holiday for a reason. You have to take that time to step away, just enjoy your life, because you're only 16, 17, 18 years old. It's not healthy to be studying continuously throughout the year. So while it's important to revise and go through a few topics during the holidays, it's so important to have a break.
Yeah, wonderful answers. And another question that's come in is, are there any major preparation tips for the external exam? So I guess I'll start with Tej for this question.
Major preparation tips. I think Vishak and Claudia kind of covered this. Is for the external exam, because there's so much to plan to cover in one exam, don't really try to cram it in the night before, the week before. Make sure you have like a pretty good standard of knowledge going into the external exams. So for example, for me, about 2-3 days before external exams started, I wasn't really studying. I was just going through the notes, just making sure that I knew each dot point. I wasn't revising really hard. So my advice is, the couple of months leading towards external exams, make sure you come to that level of preparation so you don't stress out last minute.
And if it does get to that point, inevitably, for some people, including myself, where I think there was one exam that I really hadn't prepared for, it was so relieving to have some resources lined up, some practice exams just for a few days before, so I could refresh, get my confidence up. Because although we do plan ahead and we say we're going to do all this study beforehand, sometimes it really does get to, say, the week before or a few days before. And in that case, it's just important to allow that kind of situation to happen by having certain resources available, like practice exams or some notes or some people you can turn to for last minute revision.
Yeah, perfect answer. And moving on to the next question, what are some tips if you feel like you fell behind in grade 11? Directors, Elijah, yep.
Yep. So if you feel like you fell behind in grade 11, it's obviously not too late to make a change yet. Don't get too worried about it, and don't like punish yourself for it. Just listen in class, pay attention, and just try to absorb as much as you can. So what one of my teachers and one of his students did, he basically failed like grade 10. Basically, he didn't do very well, but then in grade 11 and grade 12, he just decided to listen and pay attention during class. And you'd be surprised how much information and understanding of the content you can actually comprehend and receive if you actually pay 100% of your attention during class, and you will end up not having to do as much revision out of class. And in this way, you used to be able to do your extracurriculars, your hobbies, and still achieve a really good result. And that student in the end still achieved an OP1. So
And I agree with this. I have a friend who's going into year 12 now, who's picking up physics for the first time, and she didn't do physics in year 11. And sometimes you get into situations like that. And the most important thing, which I think is important across all aspects of life, is just to have that support system, to have the ability to network and to find people who can help you and who want to help you. So tutors, teachers, mentors, parents, other students, just those people, when all else fails, or if you really think you're behind, they really can help you. And I highly suggest doing some networking, connecting with people who are achieving the same goal that you want to achieve.
One thing I'd like to add is I completely agree with what Elijah and Claudia said. You really shouldn't beat yourself too much if you fall behind. It's something that happens to a lot of us. But I think it's very important that you realize that your teachers are tremendous resources. I've had a couple of friends who've just straight up gone to teachers and said they've fallen behind. It was in the second term, third term, and the teachers have stayed back after school. They've done tutorials, and I've had friends who've dramatically increased. And I think that's something, if any of you feel like you're falling back, that's 100% something you should do. Just go to your teachers and just be honest with it.
Yep. Oh, wonderful answers. And there's only time for 2 more questions. So I'll ask them quickly, briefly. So I guess I'll synthesize 2 questions that have been asked. So if you do say not do what you were expecting in some of the internal assessments at the very start of the year, is it still possible to get a very high ATAR?
Yeah, I think during the internals, that's when I actually lost the most marks out of all of them, mostly because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't putting in all of my effort. And the thing is, it's in the past, you can't do anything about it. So it's really important to not get stuck in the mindset of focusing on those grades and how they're going to affect your ATAR. Just do the best that you can in the future. And I think as someone who didn't do as well in the IA ones as I did in the rest of the year, it's still possible. Like, you don't have to worry about that, I don't think.
Yes, great answer. And again, moving on to the very final question, I'll synthesize these questions again. So how much do you guys think is too much of a workload or too little of a workload? So there's the case where you might have 2 sets of spares. Would that be too little of a workload? And can you be, spending your time doing an early entry uni course or studying on your other subjects? Or do you think, on the flip side of things, doing 6 subjects in a uni course is too much workload? Like, what do you think is like a good balance in grade 12? Tej, I'll probably direct this question towards you.
All right. Well, personally, I think 6 work pretty well for me. I think it's the average number that many people find they're comfortable with. Obviously, I know people who did 5, I know people who did 7, and a couple of people who added in a diploma as well. But again, one thing to focus on about too little or too much workload is when you're coming closer to an assessment and you feel like you're not at the level you want to be, for example, if it's 2 days and then you don't know half the syllabus, I think that's when you figure out, okay, I haven't really put in enough work this time. So maybe next term it's time to up my workload. And I think the same works the other way around. If you're just burnt out, kind of feel you put too much effort in.
It's really individual. Like, it honestly depends on your personal drive and like the power you have to complete assignments, to do networking, to multitask and have a balanced life. Those kinds of things they're so individual, and we can't have like a blanket statement that works for everyone. So it just depends on how you're coping with your workload. That I feel like that's the takeaway for that question.
Wonderful responses. And that brings us to the end of this panel discussion for today. So I just wanted to thank all of the panelists today for providing their time and providing all of the secrets that led them to score highly with you guys. I hope that it's been very valuable for all of you watching this. And I also wanted to give a final word from 100Coach. So 100Coach, again, offers tutors to you with the same qualifications that all the panelists have had. So some of the panelists tonight, we are a part of 100Coach, and our whole mission is to provide the highest quality tutoring with the best tips and the best secrets to scoring highly at the most affordable and accessible rates. Right, so here's a QR code. You can scan it to sign up for a free trial of 100Coach's Master Series. And 100Coach in recent months have been really working, and very fortunately for physics, especially, we've formed a partnership with one of the test writers of a previous external exam for physics. So I really hope that by providing these masterclasses, we can teach you the exact skills that people who are writing the tests for the external exam are expecting from you. So thank you so much for your attendance today. I'd like to bring that panel discussion to a close. And if you'd like to have any further follow-up questions, feel free to go to our website at 100Coach and direct any questions there. And thank you to all the panelists, Claudia, Tej, and Elijah, for providing your time today. It's been really helpful and valuable to all the students.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.